Judge John Murphy, welcome to American Black Journal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson.
Yeah. So 44 years on the bench, and you are about to wrap it up and step down. Tell me why. What is it about this moment? What is it about this time that tells you you've had enough?
Well, actually, I have not had enough. I'm enjoying myself, and there are constitutional provisions
Oh, right.
that won't allow me to go further with another election once you meet or reach a certain age.
Right.
And I'm unfortunately at that point. So
Yeah. So, I wouldn't have guessed you were that age. You don't look nearly that old.
But I appreciate it. I do appreciate it. I'm very pleased. I try to live a healthy lifestyle. I feel good.
Yeah. So let's go back to the beginning, 44 years ago. It's 1978. Detroit is a very different place. Tell me what brings you to the bench at that time and what it was like.
In law school, I had a professor, Edward Littlejohn. He was the professor, dean at the Wayne State at that time. And I had him for a couple of classes, and he would tease me and would refer to me as Judge John Murphy. At that time, Murphy was a very popular name in the judiciary.
Mm-hmm.
And he would tease me, make reference to me as Judge Murphy. And I guess it was kind of prophetic. And it kind of stuck with me. And we're still in communication. And that was the kind of impetus for me looking at the judiciary as a career. And so in 1978, there were a couple of vacancies in the old Common Pleas Court. And I threw my hat in the ring, ran for one of those two spots, and was fortunate enough to get elected along with Judge Lucille Watts.
Yes.
And that got the ball rolling.
Yeah. Actually, when I was a child, Judge Watts lived around the corner from me for a time. So talk about what it was like for an African American on the bench then. It was not as common for African Americans to get elected to the bench, to get appointed as it is now. Talk about those early years.
The early years were fun years for me in the sense that the Common Pleas Court was a very small court. It was only 13 judges on that court. And at that time, there were substantial, I think, African American representation on that court.
Mm-hmm.
We had approximately half the bench were African American, and we were led by Chief Judge at that time, Frederick Byrd. And he has a long history from the recorder's court to the referee in traffic court. So he brought a lot of the community spirit into that small court. It was the collection court for the state and the county specifically.
Yeah.
And it was not as represented as the entire bench in the state of Michigan, but in that small court, we had about 50% representation.
Yeah.
Maybe a little less, but it was a wonderful little court.
Mm-hmm. And so from there, you go to the circuit court. Is that right?
No, there was a stop in between. The Common Pleas Court was eliminated, and the 36th District Court was enacted.
Yeah.
So all of the judges on the Common Pleas bench were sort of grandfathered into the new 36th District Court. And we served there for, I would say, maybe 4 years. And then I decided I wanted to run for the Wayne County Circuit Court. The district court at that time, as you know, was a Detroit court, still is. So I had to run countywide in order to obtain the seat that I have now.
Yeah, yeah. And what are some of the things that that stand out to you over the time you've been on the Third Circuit? Again, the city is very different. I feel like the law is somewhat different. The courts are different than they were then. What are some of your best memories of this time?
Well, the circuit court has a variety of jurisdictions, and I had a number of cases that kind of stand out in my mind that were important cases in terms of the Constitution. I had the opportunity to make certain rulings in the area of the Michigan Constitution. One was the right to privacy. I was in a situation on a case wherein the sexual practices of individuals was being prosecuted, specifically gay individuals were being prosecuted for their sexual practices. And I made a ruling that the right to privacy would protect what individual adults would do in the privacy of their homes. And I looked at the Michigan Constitution, specifically Article 1, and concluded that the Michigan Constitution, when you look at all of the rights, they result in a right to privacy that would be protected. And that ruling stands today. Fortunately for the citizens of Michigan, we do have a right to privacy. And we are protected from the state action to that extent. It's a wonderful thing that we have that right. And that right, that ruling, I should say, was not challenged and is still on the books today.
Yeah, yeah.
And in the other areas, I've had a number of areas that I worked on stand out in terms of cases. Another would be in the area of sexual harassment. I had a case dealing with the first female millwright in the state. And she was harassed unbelievably so. She worked over at Chrysler, over at the Jefferson North Plant. And being the first millwright, she caught it. And so much so that her co-workers urinated in her toolbox. If you can believe that happened. And the jury rendered a verdict in her favor. It was the largest verdict in the state, and I believe the largest verdict in the country in a sexual harassment case. Hostile environment is the legal term. And that case stood out. And the case was called Alice Gilbert versus Chrysler Corporation. I've had so many different cases, Stephen, that I can't really.
Yeah, no, but those are two big ones, and that big. It really speaks to the influence that judges in the judicial system have on our lives, on the way we conduct our work and the way we conduct our private lives. So before I let you go, Judge, I'm curious, what's next? What are you going to do after you leave the bench?
Well, I plan to work and assist the lawyers doing alternative dispute resolution issues. I will sit as an arbitrator in the private sector and a facilitator in the private sector. And I want to bring all of that 44 years of experience to bear to maybe resolve cases in a non-adversarial situation. I hope I can add help to that. You know, we've really been backed up with these cases in light of the pandemic, and a lot of the live courtroom situations were put on hold. And so now we have a huge backup of cases because of that. And if we can find alternatives to the actual court process on some of those cases, it would, I think, be a great thing. And I plan to help in that process.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, Judge John Murphy, congratulations on 44 years and good luck. In
one more thing, Stephen.
Yeah,
one
sure,
more
go
thing
ahead.
that I plan to do is get a lot of fishing in.
Yeah, there you go. Right. I was going to say,
court,
no leisure.
my courtroom overlooks the river.
Oh.
And every April, May, I see the guys out on the river walleye fishing. And I'm looking at those people fish, and I'm in the courtroom and I'm looking at them. Well, coming up April, I'll be out there and I can wave to the judges.
You can wave up to the courtroom, right?
To the courtroom, because I'll be out there.
Yeah, very nice. Congratulations, and thanks for joining us on American Black Journal.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure.